Hi all, and thanks for being with me. I'm going to talk a little bit today about tax cuts because here in Australia this is quite a thing apparently. And the problem is that if you do choose to change your mind about any particular issue, if you choose to change the policy that you have agreed to at some particular point, but then think, well, let's not have that anymore because it doesn't help anybody really. And it just looks after perhaps the wealthy people in our society, and they're not the ones that really vote for us at the end of the day. We need to think more about the middle class and how they're going to react and when it comes to receiving a little bit of a tax deduction. So I've been thinking about this, about changing our mind. Now, at the moment, Albanese seems to be being beaten up by the right wing in terms of the decisions that he's made to revamp the stage three tax cuts, and he's decided that they weren't going to help anybody but the rich. And good on him for doing that. And I was thinking, well, do we make decisions in our lives and then change them? Recently, my wife and I decided to buy a new car. We went to a dealership that we had our mind set on a particular type of car, and we chatted to the salesperson, and they gave us a price, and we did some negotiations or whatever, and then we went away and we thought, well, perhaps we should look for other vehicles, and we did, and we found another one that probably suited us better and would certainly had its delivery date sooner. So, because we gathered further information, we changed our mind as to the one that we initially wanted to buy. We all do that. We change our minds from time to time based on further information, based on being able to be flexible around our decision making. And it astounds me that for some reason politicians can't do the same, that if they make a so called policy decision while canvassing for people's votes, then they can't change their mind later on. And this seems to concern a lot of people, particularly those people on the right. And in relation to the tax cuts, particularly, this has been very distressing for a lot of people to think that politicians can actually change their mind. Now, the problem that we have here is that it was a policy decision made by Albanese when he was running for election, and it was also something that he said that he would adhere to. Now, does it become a broken promise? Well, let's just call it a change of attitude, a change of belief, having a look at facts and figures based on the circumstances that surround them, the context in which those decisions now need to be made compared to what they were when the decision was initially made in that election. So the decision has been made, the changes are going to be implemented. And so we need to really ask ourselves, well, what does this mean to us? What do these changes specifically mean? And there's a lovely graphic I came across on X, and this is it. Why is changing stage three good? Now, the coalition stage three tax cuts were quite interesting in that the minimum wage, about 45k, the tax cuts provided zero. Middle income about 875, and for the higher income bracket $9,075. And when we look at the Labor's stage three tax cuts, it is evident that those people on the middle income bracket are going to be better off, not to mention those people on the minimum wage who are just going to get something as opposed to nothing. And of course, the highest income earners, they're having that halved. And when people talk about the savings that will be made, it is worth noting that the savings that will be made in that higher bracket. And one has to ask oneself, why is it that we think that the people on higher incomes are those that should receive the greatest benefit? That is a problem for all of us to ponder, because at the end of the day, it is the low incomes and the middle income earners that need the support. They're the ones struggling. The people on 200,000 plus aren't, unless they haven't invested wisely and are spending beyond their means, which is also a possibility. But the lower incomes are those that should be cared for, and they are under this particular proposal. But the right wing have gone crazy about this. Now, I'm about to show you about a 3-minute clip where I've put together an assortment of videos from a variety of people, from Paul Murray to Jim Chalmers, and so on, and Susan Ley at the end, which is an interesting one, so it's worth watching just for that. Always worth a good laugh, old Susan, I reckon, and she makes me chuckle, so watch that as well. And so I'll play that for you, and it's a compilation of the outrage. And at the beginning, I do highlight the fact that the two people speaking, Paul Murray and Michael Kroger, are people with a lot of money of their own. And I emphasise that in this particular video.
Is the broken promise going to stick, or is the spin of the government, which is, yeah, but is going to be all people remember because they're $17 richer a week?
Well, mate, the answer to that is very clear. So the polling organisations which will be doing surveys on the tax cuts now will be only asking one question, which is, are you in favour or against the changes to the tax system? And a majority will say they're in favour.
Correct.
Obviously, because the vast majority of people are getting them. However, what they're not going to do is ask question number 2, which is the fundamental question, which is this. Do you believe a promise made to you by Anthony Albanese? And a majority of people are going to say, I wouldn't believe a word he says.
We know that Albanese has been promising that he's going to do something for cost of living, but at the same time, we have not seen that at all.
Well, we've been rolling out substantial cost of living relief over the course of the first year and a half or so of our government. We've been rolling out energy bill relief, cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines, more rent assistance. In a whole bunch of different ways, we have been rolling out cost of living relief throughout the life of our government. The Liberals and Nationals want higher taxes on Middle Australia to fund an even bigger tax cut for people on the highest incomes. The Liberals and Nationals want higher taxes on Middle Australia to fund an even bigger tax cut for people on the highest incomes. That's their position. That's the position that Susan Ley put forward. We have a different view. This is an opportunity to do the right thing by people, to give bigger tax cuts to more people to help with cost of living pressures, and that's what we'll be putting to the Parliament. And Peter Dutton and the Liberals and Nationals can choose between bigger, fairer, better tax cuts for more people, or their current position, which is higher taxes on Middle Australia to fund an even bigger tax cut for people on the highest incomes already.
Susan, has the coalition ever gone to an election, made a promise, and then got in and said, well, economic times are different, we have to change tack?
Well, that's what this is going to do. This is going to double the tax cut for the average Aussie worker. You know, every week, Nat, you ask us, what can we do to help Australians with the cost of living? And every week I say, look, we're tackling childcare, we're reducing the cost of medicines, and you say to me, what more can you do? Now, the easy thing would have been to say, look, we feel your pain, we know that you're doing it tough, but there's no more that we can do here. The tough thing is to say, look, we'll change the policy to help more people. And I'm happy to cop a tongue lashing from Susan on the show today if it means that we can give a bigger tax cut to 11 million Australians. Now, they say they want an election now. What would your policy be, Susan? Are you saying that you're going to vote against a bigger tax cut for 11 million Australians and jack taxes back up again if you win the next election?
Susan, are you? Will the coalition vote against these changes?
We'll drill into the detail. 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 Like I said, Nat, we've discovered there's $28 billion of bracket creep.
Was that a no?
We'll drill into the detail. We will have a look at this.
You've got the
we will
detail.
have a close look at this. We
They don't know.
out there.
We
They
haven't
don't
even
know.
seen the
They
legislation,
don't know
Jason.
what to do.
We don't even have the legislation. We will
You've
look
got
at
the
it closely.
policy.
The
It's been
coalition
announced
will
today.
always have lower taxes.
Are you going to vote
Yes,
against a
know
bigger
that.
tax
What's your
cut for
gut
11
feeling?
million Australians?
Always be lower under the coalition.
Susan,
Well,
you seem
will
pretty
it?
Taxes
firm
will
on
always
it.
be lower under the coalition.
So you're going to vote against a
Let's
tax
have
cut
a
for
look.
11 million Australians or not?
Jason, you're asking me to forecast something we haven't seen the detail.
So it fascinates me, I think, that at one end you've got people like Murray and Kroger who are themselves are millionaires, definitely not going to suffer terribly from the decrease in tax cuts that are offered their tax bracket, and don't seem to care about the low or middle income earners at all. no consideration whatsoever for them. This is just used as a talking point to be able to highlight the fact that Albanese has changed his mind or broken a promise, as they say. And Susan Lee, who's just an appalling individual, she herself says that they haven't looked at the detail. Well, a whole swath of information has been released in relation to all of this, and Albanese on Thursday gave a press club talk which described exactly what this was all about, and clearly Susan Lee was not prepared to watch that. And as always, the Liberal Party will say no to anything that is suggested by the Labor Party. And I think this is an appalling state of Australian politics now, where we're becoming more Americanised in terms of rejecting any reasonable offer that is offered by a government or a governing body for that matter. And as a result, the Liberal Party will say no to it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. And I do want to say that there are a number of people who have objected to the fact that I do say make these comments, and I do mean it. Make comments. If they're too offensive, they probably won't go up anyway. But I do want to hear ideas that you might have. A couple of people over recent times have put some corrections from my perspective. They've corrected me in some of the things that I've said, and I appreciate that. If it's done respectfully, that's fine. I certainly will acknowledge it. So thanks everybody for joining me. Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.